feisty and a group of House Republicans who have rejected, it seems, his principles, or at least there's enough of them that have rejected them to...
They saw through them. They saw that it wasn't that much different from the Senate bill.
Exactly. They read just like the candidate.
It just sounded, it was just in more abstract language, right? But with
a few more, like, boob bait for Bubba's thrown in.
What do you think is their motivation?
72 hours before they pass it.
Right. So what they did was they put, I'm told that, and again, I'm not a member of Congress, so I wasn't there, but they put 3 microphones in the room for the immigration discussion, and they had one, and it was like C-SPAN. You had, if you wanted to speak, you had to go to the microphone that matched your opinion on the principles. And so he had one in favor, one opposed, and then one in the middle that said, we support these principles, but we don't think we should do anything right now. So which microphone do you think had the most people behind it? I'm sure it was the middle one, but it still was recommending let's not do anything now. So even these gauzy-sounding principles have been rejected by most House Republicans.
What do you think the rationale behind this push is?
Well, I think Boehner wants to do it. He believes, again,
is he just dumb?
The theory is it's either giant bags of money or it's really believing that this is a good thing for the Republican Party. So I personally, my theory is giant bags of money.
You know all those people that were supporting Gabriel Gomez and the arguments they used? It's the same arguments here.
Yeah.
The wolf in sheep's clothing.
And it didn't do much for Gabe Gomez, did it?
Rush Limbaugh had a point, which was, it's not just the congressmen or the senators and who are looking for jobs. It's the staffers. So all of these politicians like Boehner are in a bubble surrounded by staffers who are influencing him and telling him this is what the public really wants.
And can I tell you about one of these staffers? Her name is Becky Talent, the one who's John McCain's staffer, who was hired by Boehner to make an immigration deal. I have friends who worked with her back in 2006, 2007 when she was John McCain's staffer. And the move at the time, it was Ted Kennedy, George Bush, and John McCain trying to push through this very same package. And they had, that time, they actually had about 10 professional career staffers from the Department of Homeland Security who were writing the bill.
Did they call it the DREAM Act back then?
No, it's called, the
Comprehensive Immigration.
They always call it like the More Enforcement and Border Security Bill, when it's really an amnesty bill. So these staffers from DHS, who are all experts on all aspects of immigration law, were writing a bill that would at least have legitimate enforcement and security measures, and where people who were given green cards would have to meet the same standards as other green card holders do, and that it would be reasonable. And they would say, okay, it's going to be this way. And Becky Talent would say, no, that's not going to go over with Esther. Esther was Ted Kennedy's immigration staffer. Her name is Esther Olavarria. She's a former immigration lawyer from Miami. Worked for Ted Kennedy for years. So here is the Republican staffer rejecting what the career staff say because Ted Kennedy's staffer won't go. So she's essentially Ted Kennedy's lackey on the Republican side. She was a tool of Ted Kennedy. Esther is now President Obama's top immigration staffer. And Becky is now Boehner's top immigration staffer. So you've got, this is where these people come from. They only talk to each other. They don't, Becky doesn't know immigration law from tax law. She, if she has a question, she goes and asks Esther, her best buddy. The New York Times did a story on them about, and for them it's, bipartisanship at work on immigration reform. And it's two peas in a pod. Who claim to represent both parties. And so, you know, she's a dumb tool of the White House working for Boehner. And you're right, that's who he listens to. So what we're trying to do is, first of all, educate people about what is really in these proposals. There is no legislation yet, so we haven't really kicked into gear in doing the legislative analysis. But we will pick it apart. We picked apart the Gang of Eight bill. It was 1,200 pages by the end of it, but we did put out the analysis and that got circulated to all the staffers. But right now, we're also encouraging people and trying to get the activist groups organized to keep the pressure up on the House. If you disagree with this plan of mass amnesty and mass increases in immigration, contact your representatives, either, well, the Massachusetts congressional delegation is pretty much hopeless on this, but also contact House leadership and let them know that these principles are unacceptable and that the House should not move forward on this bill at this time, that we think that there should be immigration bills passed and there are improvements that can be made, but it should be done next year when the Republicans have a shot at taking the Senate as well. So there is a group of Tea Party groups and other activist groups in Massachusetts that have gotten together and put together an umbrella organization called America First Immigration Reform. And they set up a website, and it's a good place to get updates on what's going on and other information, like talking points, contact information, and so on, that you can take advantage of and be part of more of a statewide effort to educate people and to talk to people about what a bad idea these proposals are, if that's in fact what you think. It worked a lot. It worked very well. We had hundreds of calls coming out from Massachusetts last year in the spring during the Gang of Eight bill debate. And I think people had a real a very compelling argument to make. A lot of the callers from Massachusetts were saying, look, we just got attacked here. We know firsthand what happens when we have an insecure immigration policy and lack of enforcement. You know, don't pass the Gang of Eight bill, which would have gutted enforcement. We think that a similar effort this year would be very effective, particularly with members of the House of Representatives, many of whom are Tea Party allies in the House of Representatives. So I would encourage you to go to the afir.org, and I actually brought with me some talking points to use if you can make some calls. We're ramping those up pretty much now since these principles have come out. It looks like there's already been some movement within House Republican leadership. Paul Ryan, who is one of the big backers of the Gang of Eight bill and doing something similar in the House, is now backtracking from it a little bit. And the reasons are, first of all, we can't trust the Obama administration to enforce any law that Congress writes and passes.
Any law whatsoever.
Any law, period.
Even their own law.
Right. And that we could get better, more meaningful and constructive reforms with a different Congress, and that this is just, there needs to be enforcement first of the laws we have that's shown to be working before we go ahead. That my organization's position is we think that there might be a certain kind of an amnesty that would be doable, much more narrow than the Obama administration has been talking about, but not so irresponsibly implemented, like with some actual standards like criminal background checks, like stuff like that, you know, people would actually be excluded. But not until there has been some kind of demonstrated effectiveness in enforcement and improvements in laws. So, which is not going to happen anytime soon, but still, we'll be willing to talk about it.
Proposed something along those lines, saying, you know, it would have to come up for a vote periodically, and it would have to be measured against, okay, here are the standards we set, were those standards met, yes or no?
Right, right.